Hello, welcome. Welcome to those who are just joining in. Just taking a few minutes to get started here. Got a special guest coming on tonight. JustCurious is going to join me sometime soon. Lots of stuff to potentially talk about with Mangione, possibly Koberger, maybe even the helicopter / airlines crash. Oh my gosh, lots of stuff to potentially talk about. We'll probably mostly be talking about Mangione tonight, but as has been usual lately. But there are other things. Hey, from Sacramento, welcome. Sacramento. So you're a West Coaster like I am. So anyways, yeah, like I said, I got a guest coming in. She's going to be here shortly. But otherwise, we got a couple minutes before we get started officially, starting at 6 o'clock. But I'm open for some early questions before I have a guest on. Of course, we'll also be paying attention to the chat when my guest joins. She's probably going to be better at it than me as far as keeping up on the chat. I tend to get focused so much on conversation that I forget to pay attention to the chat as much as I should. But she's probably pretty good at that. Raised in the Bay Area, Sacramento for 20 years. Wow. I've been only down to California a few times in my lifetime, but it's very nice. I've been mostly a Washingtonian, now an Oregonian, been up in Seattle area a lot, and now kind of in Oregon, but. Welcome to all people who are joining. I realize that it's early for this, but if we can get some likes and some loves or whatever you want to say going, it'll help us get the channel awareness going. So when my guest comes in, they can have a warm reception. So if anybody is bored, you can smash some likes a little bit and get us something, because we got absolutely zero right now, and we'll need to get some of that going. Thank you so much for that help. That'll get us going eventually here. So. And like I said, I'm expecting my guest coming in here shortly. She said around 6 o'clock she'd be able to make it. She's got some dog duties and things to do as well, so we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, I'm open to discuss whatever. Again, my big topics that I have been hitting mostly has been Luigi Mangione. There's been some recent developments in that as far as the police officers who are all getting commendations and awards for arresting Luigi Mangione. We had both the San Francisco officer recognized, and now the two Altoona police officers recognized publicly for arresting Mangione or helping to lead to the arrest of Mangione. So it'd be nice to talk about how you feel about that. We have JustCurious, my guest, is going to be coming. She's going to talk about some research that she turned me on to, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that may be way bigger than what you. I know they did nothing. You may be way bigger than she realizes. I don't know. We'll see. It's hey, there's my guest. So my guest has arrived. So we'll be able to hear it from the horse. Oh my gosh, I just swallowed some spit. That's horrible timing. Let me see if I can get my guest on. If she's settled in and ready.
Hello, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, just getting started. In fact, you're 1 minute early. We're still 1 minute early.
Oh my goodness, look at that prompt.
I need to turn my volume up because I think I can squeeze a bit more out of that. Okay, perfect. So anyways, yeah, I was just kind of warming up the audience, if you will, and getting some likes going. So that's nice. Thanks again for the people who are helping us get some likes going on the live here, so that we can get a little bit more exposure. If you know anybody who might be interested in the topics of Luigi Mangione or Koberger or P. Diddy or the new helicopter / plane crash, which I'm going to maybe dive into, not necessarily tonight, but if that's on your mind, we'll take questions. But I did want to talk to my guest because I guess I'll start out by saying this, that you had posted a video just recently about that protest that you found outside the headquarters of United Healthcare in Minnesota. And I think on your video, I'm not sure, but on your video, I think you mentioned April of 2024 as that protest. It turns out I found out that there were two protests.
Yep,
There was another one in
two of them.
July. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So yeah, if you want to talk a little bit about that, I would. When you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, you might be onto something way bigger than you realize. So let's.
That tends to happen. I got myself into that at work today. I went to do one project and found myself doing another project. So this isn't too far off of how my brain works on a normal basis. But what started it was the fact that I'm going to say BT did not have security with them as they were walking to this conference in New York, and that is unusual. I wanted to look more into that without making any assumptions. And I just kind of started Googling the name, the company that person works for, and then security. And I went through so many Google pages, and this was multiple Google pages away, like 5, 6 pages down. Not scrolling down, but like once you get to the end, you have to go to the next, Google page.
Yeah,
And it comes up that there was this article where someone who had offered or provided security to this person in the past was making a comment
yeah,
about how they thought it was very unusual because not only does the company offer and provide, he also did in addition to for this person in this company. And he had said specifically around the protests that were happening at the headquarters there. And the part that I thought was very interesting was that there was a casket being carried around.
right, right.
And, I live in a big city and there are a lot of protests that go on around here. And that is a very big item to bring to a protest and carry around. And it was eerie to me.
And they and
It
and
was
they and they
eerie.
had that casket at both protests in April and July. I confirmed that.
Hmm.
Um, Also, I believe that guy's name, the security guy, was something Klein, if I remember right, and he had
Right.
actually provided security for Brian Thompson around 2009. I don't remember if it ended in 2009 or if it was between 2009 2012, something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's
but
not
anyway,
unusual for them to have
yeah,
security. And so that's why I was like, that's just weird. It was just weird to me.
well,
But the
yeah,
whole like casket and the protest, and the other thing I thought was really interesting is one of the people speaking for the group protesting said, we understand that there's a big problem here in the country with gun violence and, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, I said the G word. Uh-oh. Hope we don't get in
yeah,
trouble.
I hope
Um,
not.
but I thought it was interesting because why would you say that if you're there for something else? I don't know. Again, it was just a weird coincidence that they brought that up, and then we see this happen in New York with that specific instrument, if you will.
Yeah, so I want to cover a little bit of the details, and I can't believe I forgot the name. I wonder if you have the notes in front of you. The group that organized it was something like People's Alliance, um,
I can
something.
grab. I'll grab my
PI.
computer. While you do the details, I'll
Okay.
look it up real
Yeah.
quick.
So the group that organized it was like it was PIA, I think, People's some International Alliance or something like that, and they had formed a protest against various different political issues, but in particular, they had gone after another healthcare company before this, and I can't remember which one that was. Again, maybe you can grab that in the notes. But what was interesting was in April, they did this protest outside the headquarters of in Minnesota, headquarters of United Healthcare, and there was over 100 people there, and they had a casket that they were carrying around. Brian Thompson was supposedly there, according to the news article that I read on this case. He was at the building at the time. The casket wasn't, to be clear, I want to be clear, the casket wasn't really supposedly a veiled comment threat against anybody. The casket was, it had a sign that was posted on it, something to the effect of United Healthcare denies claims or something like that. Um,
Hmm.
they were making an issue over the rise of claims that were being denied by United Healthcare. Now, there were several things that I found super interesting, and I'm sorry that I'm dominating for a minute. Just give me a minute to kind of recap what I see, and then we'll talk more openly together. But
Oh,
um,
you take your time. This is your platform. You take your time.
fair enough. So, what I found was interesting was it shows to you that there was a sentiment in America that was getting already so spun up over the denial of claims and the percentage increase the United Healthcare, that this was becoming on everyone's mind. In other words, it wasn't just Luigi, if he did do it, that was thinking about this. This was a bigger issue, and people were gathering from other states to come to Minnesota and protest the headquarters of United Healthcare. What was really interesting to me, I guess, is when I saw at the second protest in July that there were arrests made because the protesters had actually blocked a road and were causing a disturbance. Some of the people that were detained were from New York, which I thought was really interesting. And the reason I say it's interesting is not necessarily because I'm saying, oh, they did it or whatever. But the point being is that when you have a group of organized protesters carrying around People's Action Institute, thank you, PAI. I guess I said PIA. It's PAI, People's Action Institute. So anyways, my point being before I kind of wrap this up was I found it super interesting that a group was motivated enough to and organized enough to send people from multiple states. I can't remember what the other states were that they came from. I bet you have those notes in front of you. But the ones that really tipped me off were there were people from New York that were there as well. That had been detained. I could not find those names. I would like to link who was there and who knows who and who knows who to see if there's any kind of weird, like 7 degrees to Kevin Bacon kind of thing you can make to Luigi Mangione, that somebody who knows somebody who was there, because I find that super interesting. So for me, the conversation topic at the moment is how interesting is it that this group was carrying around a casket in front of United Healthcare when Brian Thompson was there with this claim about, they deny claims. And then when the shooting happens, there's defend, deny, depose on the bullet casings. It sounds very similar. How do we know that someone inside that organization isn't involved in this event or the shooter? And was that Luigi Mangione? Can we prove any kind of connection between Luigi Mangione and PAI? What are your thoughts?
I am just processing all of it, and it's hard to think there isn't a connection, to be honest with you. And if you were to go to an organization or like an organized event like that, what's to say you wouldn't meet other people that had special skills or some kind of special interest in forming an alliance, if you will,
Right?
and carrying something out?
Well, let's talk about the dark.
I don't think it's far-fetched.
Let's start with the dark time. When did Luigi go dark? Was it June, July-ish, 2024?
So he was in Asia in April.
Which was
I
during
know
the
that.
first protest. So he wouldn't necessarily have been at the first protest, but
And maybe back around July. I don't know if someone in the comments would be able to know about July. I think it was around July that he was coming back. I know some people have some amazing timelines.
yeah,
So I have a timeline that says July is when the friend didn't hear from him in the wedding, and then July is also the last communication he had with his family.
yeah,
So I don't know when it doesn't really say. Only in April that we know that he had been in Asia 2 months prior to that.
yeah. So where
So
I'm going
July is
with
kind
that
of the
is,
time.
yeah, and where I'm going to, I mean, it's a bit of a reach, right? Right now, there's no way to connect Luigi Mangione to this protest group. But what we can speculate is that he wouldn't have been at the first protest because he was in Asia, and it seems to be pretty well documented that he was traveling Asia in April. Now, supposedly he was back in San Francisco in the June-ish time frame and went missing, and his family was looking for him in the July time frame somewhere there. So in theory, he could have been involved with in some way, shape, or form with that. But again, pure speculation. I have no tie at this moment between Luigi Mangione and the People's, whatever it was. What was it again? People's
PAI, let's see. People's Action Institute.
Action Institute. I
Doesn't
did
really
look.
roll off the tongue.
No, I did look into them. It didn't seem that they were a particularly violent group. I didn't see any history of them having violent protests. But again, I want to say, and I apologize for making you do the work, but if you have, there was a couple of articles I looked at. I don't know if you have them in front of me, but they had protested another healthcare company before United Healthcare. Do you have that information?
I don't. I can look it up. But the 11 people were from Minnesota, Illinois, Maine, Texas, West Virginia, and New York.
Yeah. And like I said, for me, the New York one kind of just like, ding dong, like, oh, somebody
Yeah.
from New York was involved in it, and then somebody in New York guns him down after maybe this protest. Like, granted, there's a good time interval between July and December, but did this foment somebody's idea? Did they cement something like, you know what? I think this is what I'm going to do. Like, I don't know.
I am looking up. So let's see. I just quickly tried to Google People Action Institute protest insurance. I'm not seeing anything
What is this?
immediate.
There was something about an O. It was a name of a company with an O, and maybe it wasn't. Maybe it
Uh,
wasn't a health. I thought it was a healthcare company. I remember it was a. There was a. Oh my gosh, one thing I haven't learned to do yet is be on my computer doing research while I'm doing a live. So I don't know if I want to get better at that or do better at making my notes ahead of time. I really should have come more prepared, but gosh,
well,
there was something
Optum.
that stuck in my head that was interesting that they had protested somebody else shortly before that.
Well, was it Optum? Because Optum is a part of United Healthcare.
It might have been. It might have.
Okay.
It was an O. I remember it was an O. So maybe that was what right brought my attention to it.
That's what I know for, like off the top of my head, I know that that's a
And
subsidiary of United Healthcare.
I want to say that was before that they protested at United Healthcare. Like they I think they had protested at maybe Optum. Let's say that was, and then had some discussions with United Healthcare, and then ended up protesting in front of United Healthcare. Is what I kind of gathered. Again, I'm going off of my memory from reading the articles yesterday, but. So it
Yeah, I
sounds like
mean, I think it's
Optum is a
interesting.
pharmaceutical. Okay.
Optum is like healthcare. So it would be clinics. You
Yeah.
could go, yeah, you could go get like a doctor's visit at Optum. They
So
had
first,
recently purchased another, I forgot who they purchased, but they took over another company,
so
which,
first of all, I want to congratulate you for stumbling upon that in the first place because it's kind of funny because like you're the first time I'd heard anything about that, and then I was thinking like, why the hell haven't we heard about that? Like,
yeah.
why isn't that something that somebody would seriously be looking into? Hey, we just had a group of protesters organize and come march on United Healthcare carrying a casket around our building, and which could be seen as a veiled threat, and
hmm
nobody's going to mention that.
And the three words on the metal things that go inside of the pew pew. I mean, it feels, and they mentioned G violence. It just feels, it feels really tied to it. I mean, if I was part of the media, I wouldn't be turning a blind eye to it, especially. And I know we're getting into other directions here, but when the estranged wife, because I'm not going to say wife because they're not fully divorced, but they're not married, um, says, I don't know, he was getting some threats, something about claims.
Right, right. That was one of the. By the way, I want to get back to Kelsey Siebold. I'm not sure if I recognize that name. I want to get back to that in the comments. But yeah, you're right. Like one of the first things I remember when the wife was asked about or told about the thing, and they said, "Do you have any idea who might have wanted to do this?" And she said, "Well, I don't know, but there were some peoples that were making threats against them. I think it had to do with claims." And I'm like, really? No shit. Like just that's going to be just like I'm going to go. Oh yeah, I think some people are mad at him about some claims. Like,
Well,
huh,
that's immediately what the media told us, right? Oh, it has to be someone whose family member was denied care. This has to be someone who was denied care. It was a real vendetta, is what they kept
right.
telling us. And
Well,
then
this leads.
you learn more about LM, and you're like, oh, he wasn't even part of that, and he had a successful surgery. And okay,
Remember
so
one of the earliest manifestos that I heard hit the. I don't know if you read that one or whatever, but oh my gosh, I forgot to unplug my freaking bell in my room. I'm so sorry about that. But anyways, one of the earliest manifestos out there was this big long diatribe about how Luigi was caring for his mom and she had all these problems with the health insurance company, and they jacked around her claims and made it so that she would have to start her out-of-pocket maximum again and all this stuff, and she was in so much pain and he couldn't stand listening to her scream in pain every night, and this is what motivated him to go there. And it turned out that entire manifesto was unofficial horseshit. So
yeah,
remember
it
that?
yeah, it read weird, and the story, like if you go and look at their house, which, I'm not, maybe I'm a little bit embarrassed to say I might have Zillowed where they live just to see, their house looks very normal and unassuming. So it's possible they could have had a very normal life considering the wealth comes from the grandfather. It might not have hit them yet. Although, you don't they didn't bat an eye at paying $40,000 a year for their child's education, but I'm just saying that it could have been that they were struggling or had some struggles with paying for health care or paying for surgeries, but it didn't seem like it was that severe like the original, we'll call it manifesto made it sound. I mean, that sounded more like, average Joe would have wrote that. Average Joe would have experienced that. But we know they're a little more privileged than that. So it
Well,
just raised flags.
if I remember right, not only did the family send him to a $40,000 a year high school, but they also, I think their house was valued at $4.5 million, and they owned multiple nursing home facilities or something like that. So I don't think the family is hurting for money, which is part of the. I mean, that's what I remember about the family's finances. So I don't think they're hurting for money, and therefore it didn't make sense to me when they were like, oh yeah, they were trying to jack around her insurance claim so that she would have to start her out of pocket maximum again. I'm like, I don't think that's a concern for somebody with a $4.5 million home and multiple businesses they own, and the whole family's got money, and their kid can go to a $40,000 a year private school.
Yeah, I agree. It didn't set, not that it didn't sit well, it didn't make sense. But I'm curious what Trish was saying about Kelsey Siebold.
Yeah.
I
Do you
was
recognize that name?
I don't, but trying to see if she put more in the
Jesse
comments.
Siebold is a Houston company, and it's healthcare provider for NASA. Is a healthcare provider for
Oh,
NASA.
interesting.
And can you summarize the connection there, or does it just something you need us to look into? Or I shouldn't say you need us to look into. You're
Trish
suggesting
needs
we
it.
should.
Yeah, it's all of it's, I don't know. I still, we were talking earlier today, me and a couple other people, and it's really hard to wrap your brain around it because we've lived through so much of us. Many of us have lived through a lot of this uh, profiled type of person that commits such acts. And there's nothing about LM that fits that profile other than there was some pain. Maybe he experienced, some cognitive decline because he was talking about brain fog and everything else. But again, those things they don't directly equate to committing such act.
Right.
So it boggles your mind to try to think about what connection is it. And I think we're all grasping so hard to make some kind of connection because we're not being fed anything anymore. It just kind of
Right.
stopped.
Right. Right. Well, and that's just it. Like I don't know where to weigh in on this situation as well. I mean, I'll be fair. Can I see a possibility or even a likelihood that Luigi Mangione did do it and he did act alone? Sure, I can see that as a possibility. And the question becomes, is this story still interesting? And yes, for me, the story is still interesting because it's the bigger issue. What was the motivation? Is that narrative about our healthcare system and corporate greed? Is that what's going on? Was it a professional hit? Like, there's a million things that are interesting about this story. And the fact that we just simply don't know if law enforcement has been straight with us about the facts, whether we're going to find out that they don't have half the stuff they think that they have when it comes time for discovery, and we get to see what they have. We'll be like, wait a minute, I thought you guys said you had this, this, and this, and now you're saying, well, maybe not. Like, I just can't wait to find out how it's going to play out. It's kind of like this big, huge drama.
I agree. And you just said law enforcement, and it reminds me of the conversation that we were having about the awards that went out.
Yeah.
That's not okay. It's not okay to give someone an award about someone who hasn't even been, they haven't had their day.
Yeah.
So,
So let's cover that for people who may not have heard that. So yesterday, I think it happened yesterday for two different areas. The San Francisco police officer who was working on the missing persons report for the family looking for Luigi Mangione because the family had reported him missing. He apparently made a connection between the shooting in New York and said, oh, this looks like the same guy. And that officer in San Francisco was awarded Officer of the Month for making the connection to Luigi Mangione, the missing person, to being the shooter in the United Healthcare situation. So that guy was given an award, Officer of the Month, by the San Francisco PD. In addition, is it Jessica Tisch from the New York Police Commissioner? So she got on stage with the two Altoona police officers and awarded them a little plaque and a ceremony saying that they were both being awarded honorary New York Police Detective awards. So they were being honorary detectives with the New York Police Department for their arrest of Luigi Mangione in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Both of which are ridiculous in my part. They didn't do anything other than respond to a phone call, ask a few questions, found his answer suspicious, and made an arrest. But all of a sudden, they're honorary detectives with the New York Police Department. The fact that they're making a big spectacle out of patting all the officers on the back for arresting the bad guy is bad form, in my opinion. You know?
I agree. I absolutely agree. And it's still really, really fishy to me that we have seen nothing from Altoona. Nothing. I grew up in a small town, and I tell you what, people love to be snoopy. And I do not think there was a person that passed by that McDonald's that wasn't curious about seeing why those cop cars were there, if they
Right,
were there.
right.
hmm it's hard to believe. Unless, did they confiscate everyone's phones? Did they make them, say that they won't post? It's just hard to believe that someone didn't want their 15 minutes of fame to be connected to it somehow, leaked to a friend, to a friend, to a friend. I mean, look at all the pictures of LM that are out right now. People are saying, hey, I have this, I have this, I have that. They're sharing with people and people are telling other people. So you can't tell me there is nothing that comes out of Altoona where someone said, oh, yeah, I was there getting my regular coffee in the morning and I saw it.
So it's funny you mention it because all these things go through my head too, and I don't know what to make of it. Here's an
Mm-hmm.
example. I don't know how busy that particular McDonald's is. Now, I frankly don't know any McDonald's that isn't relatively busy at all times, but maybe there's McDonald's in Altoona that has no customers or practically no customers. Maybe it was 3 people, and that way it narrows down the whole thing. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But at the point that any bystander is in there and hears anything related to New York City and have you been to New York recently and that stuff, said phones would have come out left and right to record, like, holy
Yeah.
shit, is this the guy from, like, I can't even imagine that somebody isn't doing that. And again, we don't know, did they tell everybody put your phone away, to confiscate phones? Who knows what kind of grab was done to do that? But just logistically, in today's world of cell phones where there's cell phones everywhere, I can't understand how it is that nobody took a on the scene video footage of the arrest. That
Yeah.
boggles me.
Well, it's everywhere. You see video after video after video on the internet now where the most benign conversations between neighbors are recorded because you think someone's going to do something. Cameras are everywhere, phones recording all the time,
Yeah.
everything, everything. I don't know. I just find it strange. And the other thing is, we get so much information. In fact, I think I heard like there were 2 more charges added to Diddy today. Like, we're hearing things all the time about other people. Why are we not hearing a single dang thing about this?
So
So they
good point.
found nothing?
I did hear David Betris, who I follow on TikTok from time to time. I think he said there was 4 charges that were brought up by the Southern
Okay.
District of New York, 4 additional charges on top of the 11 count federal case. So I heard that today, but he's the only person I heard say that. But I presume he's correct. Like, I have no reason to doubt his facts.
Right. Right. Interesting. Yeah, I just haven't heard anything. And of course, we're all sitting there scrubbing, look for anything we possibly can find. And I
And
just find it odd.
those additional charges, from what I understand, were essentially related to interstate commerce basically crossing state lines with a gun using this is the craziest thing to me. I love the laws that they just tack on and tack on and tack
hmm
on. Well, it's not good enough that there's a law against murder. If you commit murder and you used a gun, that's an extra charge. Oh, if you committed murder, used a gun, and you used public transportation to get there, that's the new charge. You used public transportation to get there to commit a murder. I'm like, who gives a shit? Murder is murder. Why is there an extra charge for how you committed the murder and what bus you took to get the murder? Why is that? I don't even. It's just so they can have a million things to throw at you and hope something sticks.
Yeah, exactly. I'm baffled. I continue to just think of new things each day. I mean, there's not a part of me that doesn't think he knew the consequences. If it was him,
Right.
he's a smart guy. Most of us lay people know the consequences. So I was having a conversation earlier today about they said that he was there 10 days before. No, pause button in the 10 days before.
Right.
There was a long bike ride in the morning. No pause button on the way there. No, like, maybe I don't need. Okay, let's say the person went to Starbucks. No part at Starbucks where you're like, maybe I don't need to go through with this. There's just nothing in any of this that stops this person.
No.
It's hard for me to think because I think we've all been frustrated and, wanted to scream into the pillow or whatever it is. Take it out.
Right.
It
Right.
subsides. It
Yeah.
subsides. And you think
Yeah.
about, the consequences. And he's not, I know everyone says he's privileged, but he's not stupid. He knows consequences. He was very, I feel like I'd say like he's a very of the people, right? He kind of shunned the privileged life. So I don't think he thought he was above it. It just, I
Yeah.
have so many different things that run through my brain that just don't make sense to me about all of this.
There was a comment made, and I almost hesitate to bring it up because I don't like to repeat information that I've only heard like once, and I don't even remember the source. And yet I'm going to do it. I don't know why. But anyways, there was a comment that somebody made that Luigi had made a public statement that he was intrigued about understanding how life in prison is, and
Oh,
and
weird.
and they were trying to use that as a well, maybe he just simply decided that as a life experience, he wants to know what our prison system looks like and did something and got himself in there so he could like experience it. But it's, again, I heard it one place. I can't get a source on it. I don't even know why I would have repeated that, but I remember hearing that and I'm like, that it doesn't make sense either. But so many things don't make sense.
I mean, he's a deep diver. He does like to get into the nitty gritty of things. He likes to explore the cracks. He's, very cerebral in everything he does. We've seen it. That one's a hard one to believe because I think we all just watch a Netflix documentary and find out real quick that we don't want any part of it.
Right.
But there's stuff that he does that isn't totally typical, like wanting to live out of a survival kit the side of a Altoids can.
Right.
Or I'm not sure if you read the whole post about his backpack and his traveling to Asia. And he was really, like he even says, hyper fixated on certain things. So it doesn't surprise me that there would be a curiosity. I just don't think
Well,
someone would go to that
let
that
me
in the
share with
direct.
you. Let me share with you the one curiosity that I think he could have gone for, and see what your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts are on this. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there was a guy by the name of Bogle or Bogstall or something like that who had written an article. Basically, he had written an article that says why you're probably an NPC. And he was interviewed
Oh, yeah.
several times on the news about how Luigi had reached out to him about this article that he thought really touched him. And the idea behind the concept is most of us go through life just doing what we're told. We don't think too much. We don't buck the system. We don't play the game of life. We're just NPCs in somebody else's game, not really being a participator or a mover. Gunwinder. Yeah, Gunwinder correct me if his last name if you can. Anyways, so when I heard that, I thought to myself, okay, it is possible Luigi was like, I'm not going to be a freaking NPC and just watch all this shit happen. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to play this game. I'm not going to just be a bystander and an NPC like most people and just take it and just keep complaining about, boy, things are really bad in this country. And so maybe he thought, because according to the Bogle, it bothered Luigi that
Mm-hmm.
he was maybe becoming an NPC. Now
Yeah.
again, I don't want to dwell too much on it, but what are your thoughts on that?
I I stand with you. I remember him being irritated about it. I remember seeing different remarks that allude to not thinking for yourself, a lot of how, social media and the brain rot and all of that. And I'm looking at the comments, and it seems like everyone agrees with you that he was really irritated with the whole NPC concept of, just going through the motions, and he didn't want to do that.
Right, and then it leads to this crazy. This is how a crazy person like me thinks that he co-founded a game club
Yeah.
at his university. He was into game theory, He was involved in a course at Stanford on game theory, an economics class that was 286, just like the number of the Pokemon 286, which was on game theory. And the game theory was essentially the economics class, because I was asking Chat GPT and stuff like, what does game theory have to do with economics? And it had to do with how do the actions of other players increase the chances of success of another player. And I thought, that's super interesting when you're talking about a theory. Did multiple people pull this off? And how did the actions of all the different actors increase the likelihood that the player, one, got away with it?
And there's a comment that says, how does someone who shows empathy to people and animals the way he did, they don't murder someone? I agree. I think he had, this is where it's conflicting to me, is because I think that he saw pain and suffering. He is, going through what you're talking about, where you're influencing others, or you're influencing yourself, or you're not doing anything. But then it's hard to believe that he would go to such extreme. This is where I think that he's a part of, not the.
This is, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
No, you're fine.
I wanted to point out that I made a video about this once, and it wasn't just something to talk about for the day. Is it possible that Luigi isn't the kind of person who could take somebody else out? Like, he doesn't have the stomach for that. But he agrees that something that extreme should be done. So what if he conspired with a group of people and said, look, I'll take the fall for this, but I don't have the guts. I don't have it within me to do that. But I believe in the cause. So if you pull it off, I'll help you and I'll take the fall. And I thought, is that a legitimate possibility?
I've thought about it because, let's be honest, just getting everything organized to get there is a feat in itself. Getting the instrument used, finding out that event is going to happen, that person is going to be in a different hotel. There's just so many things, so many boxes to check, that one person doing it by themselves it's amazing. I'm a project manager. As a project manager, I would like to be able to do that, to be able to accomplish such specificity in tasks and getting it all aligned perfectly to carry something out. That's an intense skill. The other part, to kind of jump off of that, I was thinking that maybe he didn't say, I will take the fall for this. Maybe that wasn't part of the plan. Maybe someone did him dirty. Maybe something went south.
I thought that as well. I thought to myself, and again, I understand that this is complete theory crafting and there's not proof of any of this, but I thought to myself, is it possible he conspired with a group of people? Just like you said, he conspired with a group of people. They all wore similar outfits. They all spread out. They led law enforcement in different directions. And then they all turned on him and basically let him get caught. And he didn't think that was going to happen. And he was just like, whoa, like, this wasn't the... Now, I don't know that I buy that as much just because of what was on him. I can't imagine he's sitting around for 5 days carrying around the backpack with the weapon and the bullets and a manifesto and all these things, if that's really true, just so that he could maybe potentially be just one of the mini decoys and didn't realize he'd get... Like, it doesn't make entire sense, but it did run through my brain that maybe he was involved and then they threw him under the bus and let him take the fall for it when he didn't know he was going to be the fall guy.
Yeah. All of the stuff on him is weird to me. There is a new video out where there's a person walking in front of a pharmacy, and it does look like there is a backpack under that jacket. Now, that doesn't connect him to Altoona. It doesn't mean that he's that person. And I know that he's a traveler, and that's a thing people do for safety. So there's something... Now, I don't know where the person is, but I feel like there's a person that's targeting him. Is the call coming from within the house? Like, is it within the group? Because there's a comment that says, the level of trust that group would need to have is intense. And I agree. But sometimes when you're really passionate about things and you find other like-minded people, you come into it with the intent that you're trustworthy, so you think other people are trustworthy. Right. So, I'm wondering if someone, like they had their group and someone went astray, or is there an external group? Because I wish, gosh, I'm not seeing them on here, but someone did find a dead CIA page when they were looking into one of the dates. Um, there was a video on it. I'll get it to you after this, but they found a dead CIA page, and oh, it's when we were talking about oh my gosh, it just was on my brain. Anyway, I'll come back to it. But they were talking
Yeah.
about could someone in the CIA or somewhere else have been watching because they said they was there for 10 days before, and if he has these connections that everyone's thinking with the family and everything else, could he be someone else's fall guy? Could
Right.
there be other things that make him, could like the cult could be coming within the their own group? It could be coming from with
Yeah.
externally.
There's so many different theories, and I feel
So
like there's
many.
more to this story than there really is meets the eye. I did want to address real quick a comment that came up in the comments down below about whether or not I think he had the gun because he was planning on doing another event, and I will tell you my theory, because I guess that question shows that you may not know my theory. My theory is that the reason, and this is a little wild, but my theory is the reason it's a 3D printed gun is because you can print multiple 3D printed guns. I think there are multiple conspirators, and I think multiple 3D guns are out there. I think the 3D gun that Luigi had, if indeed he did really have it, isn't the one that was actually used in the commission of the act. And that was kind of part of his get out of jail free card, is he knows that they're not going to be able to tie the ballistics to it because it's not the same weapon. It's just one like it because there were multiple guns made. And I think if he did conspire for a greater purpose to take the fall for this, hoping that he's going to get off on some technicality like you can't prove that was the gun because it wasn't the actual gun, the real purpose was to let the shooter get away so that shooter can do it again. Not Luigi, but whoever got away with it. Because when everybody focused on Luigi, the real shooter could have gotten away, and that shooter may be waiting for their time to do it again.
I agree with that. That was one of the very first theories I had, that this was just a distraction until someone pops up where you can't be extradited, and then we would find out everything. We might still hear that, once there's the day in court, we might. I just find it weird that we haven't heard anything. If there was that person, you'd think they would go, neener, neener, we did it. I also think if LM actually did it and has this manifesto and has this and that and the other, and haha, look at you, follow the money, go look at the serial numbers. Why plead not guilty? I understand the concept of pleading not guilty, so you get a lower sentence.
Right.
But if you don't care about that and it's just a big F you, hey, I did it, just say you did it and move on. But that's not happening. So
Yeah.
I found Cause Kitty. That is who was found the dead CIA page, and I asked them to say more about it. It was from the stats that were old, and then she found it on Wiki, and then looked at the reference, and then it was a dead CIA page, which is weird because when you went to the page, it was like some CIA, like, I don't want to call it a notebook because we're using that a lot, but it's very interesting. I've never seen anything take me to like a CIA reference page before.
Yeah, I would like to see it myself. I'm always
Yeah.
nervous about sites, especially that have been taken down, and then you're like, well, was it ever legit? And I am a bit of a conspiracy theorist, so I know that the government itself plays games like that and puts trial balloons out there to see if people will follow leads and all kinds of weird shit and countermeasures and stuff like that. So I'm aware of their games, and so I don't want to necessarily fall into their trap too. But I do want to see it myself so I can form my own opinions
Yeah.
and make comments about it for
We'll
sure.
get it. Yeah, we'll get it to you for sure.
That'd be
I think you'll
amazing.
find it interesting because we were all like, "Wait, what's this?" Yeah, it was it's when we were going through the different facts and we were trying to find out where it was coming from. Oh, it was the 42. It was 42 in life expectancy. That statistic is 17 years old
Wow.
in the manifesto where he
What's
says we're
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. No,
What's
it's okay.
MM? Somebody asked if we already discussed MM, and I'm trying to remember what those initials might stand for. MM.
Is that the cousin?
Oh, is that what is? I don't know.
I know the
Well,
first name is the first letter, but the
yeah,
middle
yeah.
name is yeah. Oh,
Okay, yep,
yeah,
yep,
it is.
yep. No, we did not. We did not discuss him, and I'll tell you why. For full disclosure, I made a mistake early on in my TikTok account of mentioning a person by the name of DE. And damn near got myself my first official strike. Had a couple of my videos pulled for inciting violence. I got the family all over me. I got all kinds of warnings. And then I found out that Jason Brooks got kicked off of TikTok for mentioning MM. And so the last thing I want to do is follow suit. Apparently, if you start even dropping suggestions about names too heavily, you're in big trouble. Now, I don't know what Brooks said specifically about MM. I never said DE was the shooter. That's not what I said. But it was enough to get me in trouble just mentioning it. So I'm also afraid to mention MM because of that. So
Yeah, there's another, and I totally respect that, and I won't go there either. There's a comment that says the face that LM made in the federal court hallway when he was asked if he had any comments was telling. I totally agree. Did you see
right,
that when the reporters were like, "Hey, do you have anything to say?" And he gives you this look of like, oh, if you only knew.
right, right.
There's just more there.
That's why I said I think he has an ace up his sleeve. I think he knows
Yeah.
something we don't all know yet.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But I mean, I don't know. I always get so discombobulated talking about it because my brain goes, well, what about the manifesto? And the writing didn't work here, but it worked over here. And then, but what did he say over here? But there's no way he did it. But could he have done it? It's just,
I, wa-
I think it's one of the most fascinating cases out there. And I was really, really intrigued with the Kohlberger case. I mean, I still am, because I think that is so bizarre. But
I'm on that one. Yeah.
there's no doubt that he did it, right? Like
Right.
he's even, I mean, I did see, and I thought this was interesting, in connection with LM, is that, and I'm not sure if you saw this, I believe Kohlberger's attorney is saying that the fingerprints or the DNA was acquired without a warrant, and now they want to chuck it from the
Right.
case.
Right.
And I was
The
thinking,
DNA of the father that they got from the trash can, I think they were saying wasn't obtained with the warrant, but
yeah. So what does that mean with the DNA on all these? And I'm going to say it very condescendingly, the one magic water bottle that was found in all of Manhattan that just happened to be his.
I have to do this because you brought up Koberger. I have to do this. The world is a crazy place. I just want to mention I do not believe Koberger is related to the Mangione case. But here's
No.
what. But I was doing my research today on Koberger again to get because I was looking into this years ago, and now I'm back getting into it. And I was like, here's what's interesting. Koberger, DE, who we talked about, and Mangione are all within 1 inch of each other. One's 6 foot flat, one's 6'11", the other one's 6'10" and a half to 6'11" in height. All of them about the same approximate build, all dark hair, all have bushy eyebrows, all three of them. And when Koberger was arrested, it was in Pennsylvania. He had
Oh,
gone back
that's
to his
true.
parents' house in Pennsylvania, and I went, "What the frick?" Like our world is so like that's such a
Yeah,
weird coincidence. I do think it's a coincidence, but it's such a weird coincidence.
that is what's in the water out there. Anybody out there? Stop drinking the water if you're on that live.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is strange. Yeah.
I don't think there has been any updates on the TJ Maxx bag, by the way. I saw that in the chat. I don't think there's been any updates. That's been something that, as far as I know, was posted on the 6th of December and hasn't come up ever since. Other than somebody told me they've ruled it out because the bag was too new, but I don't know if the person ruled it out or if law enforcement ruled it out. Like they're like, well, that bag couldn't have been sitting around in the park for 2 days, so therefore they're saying it probably wasn't related to the event. I don't know.
Well, I don't know how the Monopoly bag was sitting in the park for 2 days. That's a $300 bag. It could have been a Goodwill JanSport bag, and someone's going to take it.
So let's talk about this for a minute, because one of the theories that some people have is that it is all Luigi Mangione and he had multiple backpacks. And so he goes into the park with one backpack and a dark jacket. He leaves the backpack full of Monopoly money in the park and then leaves with another backpack and a dark jacket. And I'm thinking to myself, what is the purpose of all of that? If
Right.
you're going to change outfits, why would you continue to have another dark jacket and another black backpack, or even anything remotely close. Why wouldn't it be a pink Fluffy the Burger Master jacket or something? I don't like. You would not want to look anything remotely like that. What is the purpose of dropping a bag, potentially that TJ Maxx bag looks like it has a jacket in it? So if the shooter dropped the bag with his jacket in it and the backpack full of money, and then leaves the park with a similar backpack and jacket, that makes no sense to me.
So, speaking of Central Park and dropping things, I remember hearing very briefly that there were divers in the Bethesda fountain looking for more, including the bike.
Yeah.
So that tells me that bike would not, and I've never thought it was a city bike because it just doesn't look like one. But
Uh-huh.
the bike really makes my brain itch also because there's no way. I want to know how if is there one? If there's not more than one, how did that one not get stolen? I know people are like, oh, it's been locked up. The lock you have to lock an electric bike is not a small lock and it's not a quick lock.
So
It's a
I'm
big,
not, yeah, I'm not saying I don't have an answer for this, but did you see the picture that shows the suspect carrying what looks like a battery for a electric bike?
yes,
And
yes,
so that some people have made the argument, well, that's not going to keep the bike from getting stolen. Battery or not, someone's going to steal that bike and
right.
whatever. And so I don't know where I weigh on that, but you saw that picture of him carrying what looks like a battery?
I saw that. I also don't see where it is on the bike because the bike's a really thin frame and
Right.
e-bikes are pretty heavy frames. Um, so I did see that, but that's only explaining, I mean, even at that, okay, even at that, that is such a risk to leave your bike overnight in the Upper West Side and hope that it's there so you can continue your entire elaborate plan
Well,
that
that's
morning.
that's the $1 million question. Was it overnight? Because there's an argument that says he took the e-bike down, he parked it in that what they're calling alley sometimes, but
Mhm.
basically that breezeway
I
between
call it a
two
breezeway.
areas, right?
Yeah,
And then it wasn't going to be very long. Like from the time that he gets off the bike, if he only arrived within an hour to 15 minutes before the event, maybe that was a risk they were willing to take. Again, I think that if you're planning on getting away, you don't take even that much of a risk at all.
no,
Maybe it wasn't there all night. I mean, we've got one guy I think that said that I've seen, only one guy that I've seen that said he was there all night long, and I still don't know if that's going to be somebody's going to testify in court that he saw him there all night long, or whether that
right,
story changes once we get him deposed. But
right. I heard the person say, oh, yeah, he was there all night. And the reporter's like, who was there? And like the person, what were they doing? They were all night. Like they confirmed twice. But again, there's all of these different things. Uh, I remember the Today Show adamantly saying that they came out of the subway
yeah,
and showing video from the cigar shop. And even one of the News Nation reporters went and did like a walkabout that was like, here's where they came out of the subway, and there's the cigar shop, and there's the camera, and whatever happened to that person. So that just tells you, oh, multiple people can look the same in the city at the same time of day.
right. Yeah, and a lot of it just doesn't add up totally for me. I mean, and there's people that are pointing out, like, in particular, the cab photo, right? The cab. Here's what's interesting
Mm-hmm.
about the cab photo, by the way. So that I pointed this out before, but I want to hit it again in case anybody in here hasn't heard me say this before. So if I would imagine that if you live in New York, you probably are aware that most of the cabs or all the cabs have a dash cam video. Some of them are made public as far as you can see it plain as day. Others are kind of more hidden, but it's not going to be a big secret that for the safety of the taxi driver that there's a camera inside of the cab. He literally gets up between the open window and looks dead straight at the camera. And I'm thinking, and of course, that's his big mistake. And I'm like, mistake my ass. Like
Yeah, I don't.
he wanted to have his picture taken because I think he knew the camera was there. But the other question I thought was super weird is supposedly his mother indicated that she can't say with certainty that's her son. Now I think it looks damn like Luigi, and even if it is Luigi, in my theory, he's just a decoy and the shooter probably got away or something like that. If that theory turns out to be true, so it is possible it could have been Luigi, but that doesn't mean Luigi is the one who was the trigger man. He could have been just the one that led a diversionary tactic off to the bus terminal. So,
Correct.
I mean, there's lots of things that are just
There's so
not
many. And we know he's curious, right? I mean, he looked at the book on the table and said, what is that? He was looking at Karen's phone. Who knows what she was doing? It looked like maybe she was checking messages or something, but he was leaning over and looking. It wouldn't shock me if he was, you know, looking to see where the cab driver was going or talking to him. I don't think it was a mistake, though. It was either intentional or it was innocent, as in, I have
Right.
no part of this at all. And I'm just a person in a cab looking at something and I don't know what's to come in the next 5 days.
Right.
But one thing I thought was really interesting, and it's on a subreddit, and it's Free, the person's name. I don't want to get us in trouble.
Yep.
But someone said there was nothing accidental about this. So it goes to your thought of this person's route goes by numerous, and I know everyone's going to say, oh my gosh, there's tons of cameras in New York. You're right, there are, but you can avoid them. I mean, look at Central Park. You could avoid them. You can also go down streets where they aren't, and maybe you're, dealing with someone's Nest Cam or something. But there were some very intentional spots where this person, just on the other side, if you go to Google Maps and you do a little spin around, there's the NYPD police cameras right there on the route that that person took.
Which
And
is
there's a
why.
couple Chase banks where, you could be seen. There's a number of places. So when they say, oh my gosh, they were avoiding surveillance, no, they absolutely were not.
Well,
Absolutely were not.
well, yes and no, and this is why I think it's interesting. Just like you pointed out, and I've mentioned many times in my videos, that one of the specials, the New York Post special, I think, on Luigi Mangione, stated one big blind spot in New York is Central Park, and
Mm-hmm.
that suspect, in my opinion, there's evidence to think that the suspect knew exactly where they needed to go to get off camera.
Yeah.
That's important. Like, not only do they know where the cameras are at, they know where to go to get off camera. And when they go off camera, that's when we have the switcheroo. That's when we have the backpack left. That's when we have the bike dumped. We don't know what's happening. All off camera. So
Mm-hmm.
so you can't convince me necessarily easily that he didn't know a camera's on him when he places a water bottle down and dead center in front of a camera.
Well,
It gently places the water bottle down on top of a pilot. He
yeah.
wanted, in my opinion, he wanted law enforcement to see that and get it quickly. He was like, hey, here's a piece of evidence. You're seeing me place it. Now come get it.
I
Right?
mean, I think most of us would go, oh, I put this on top of this trash. It's going to fall off. I'm not doing anything by putting it on top of it. And if you go to that spot and you look around, there's plenty of trash cans. And this person seems to be, on the straight and narrow with most things. I know, ironically, that we're talking about that in this context, but I think that if you didn't want to be caught, you would put it in the garbage can. And
Right.
there are garbage cans
And
around.
so what I see is a person who knows when to get caught on camera
Yeah,
and when to get off camera. That's what I
exactly.
see.
Well, and the other thing, speaking of camera, so we have this person in the taxi at 7:04, and then they say that they have footage. I don't know if it was a picture or video of them being dropped off at the bus terminal at the George W. or GW Bridge. Okay, fine. Well, why is there a picture of someone walking south over by the auto store or the automotive store? And then why is there also a picture of someone walking north on 187th? Why is someone going in circles around that area
Yeah.
on foot? That was
Yeah.
really weird to me too. That was really strange to
There's a
me.
million things that are weird. And like somebody said, why was Brian Thompson going early to the meeting? Why was the suspect, the shooter, on that side of the street where Brian was staying and followed him across the street? There's
Yeah, I don't know.
a million questions. And again, we go back to the phone call. Who is the shooter on the
Yeah.
phone with before the event? Is there a co-conspirator who's saying Brian's on his way out? Is there a co-conspirator saying, hey, we're ready for you to make the swap in the park? What's that phone call about? And of course, we're going to find out, because there's no way in hell we're not going to find out who that phone call was placed to when it comes in court. But I'm super
Yeah.
curious to find out what the official explanation is for that phone call.
I don't think many of us make casual conversation at 6:40, 6:30, 6:40 in the morning unless you're making a plan like, hey, I'm on my way to pick you up. Are you on the way to the meeting? There's something very acute if you're on the phone at that time.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Right.
I don't think that was a casual conversation of, hey, what are you doing Friday night? I think that was a very much an intel conversation. And in that video where it shows the person standing across the street, you can see that they're still on the phone and they quickly put the phone, I believe it looks like, in their pocket, and then they walk across the street. So it was a, hey, gotta go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and somebody did point out it wouldn't be probably unusual for somebody who is facilitating the meeting to be there early. So that could explain
Yeah.
it. It still leaves the question, how did the suspect in this case know that that was the time? Because it, again, the question becomes, was the suspect laying in wait all night long and just happened to get lucky in that window, or did they show up literally 15 minutes before and knew where to be at the right time, knowing that they had time to stop at a Starbucks and get a kind bar and drink water because he wouldn't miss his opportunity. Like, there's indications that the person knew exactly what little window they needed to be there at.
But rewind it even before that. How do you know the person's not staying at the hotel where the conference is and coming down the elevator? How
Right.
do you know they were even going to be outside? Because people go, oh, well, it's the Hilton and you wanted to stay at a nice hotel. But if you look at Google Maps or Google Earth, there are two better, if you will, if you look at price and stars, residences where you can stay within the Hilton property that you don't have to stay at the boutique hotel. So
Yeah.
if it was about staying in a nice place, he could have stayed on the property, been, come down the elevator and gone to the conference. He didn't have to be across the street. So you have to go to that point of, you knew that he wasn't even going to be there. And then, I mean, it's a pretty easy deduction to look around the area and go, if you're a CEO, which one are you staying at? So okay, that's a good easy guess, but still it's a guess.
And I don't want to belittle the social engineering comment. Like, people have said, well,
Hmm.
maybe they called up and talked to the front desk and made some excuse about whatever. But
That
I'll tell
one's
you this.
rough for me though, because if
Well,
you're a CEO, I don't think, there's going to be, I think there's going to be things in place where you tell people, especially at a boutique hotel,
I
don't
can
tell the
tell you.
person
I can
that
tell
they're
you from
here.
experience that I can call a hotel if my wife's staying there and I can't get them to confirm my
Right.
wife's staying there, because that they don't give that information out. I've called before on my boss that I know is at a hotel and they won't confirm that my boss is there. And I'm like, I know my boss is there. I just don't know what room number they're in. Well, I can't tell you whether your boss is
Yep.
here or what the room number is. They don't tell
Yeah.
people shit. But
Right.
could
And
somebody have done it? Maybe. If they're really good and charismatic, that's the argument, and worked the system, maybe. You
but
know,
do you even have like, yeah, that one's a rough one for me. I just think that it would be, if you are that high profile, high level, where you have security offered to you, going back full circle to the beginning of the conversation, where they have hired security for you, they're not taking chances on someone being able to call and find out your location in a hotel.
well, and I want to back up to something that we said early in the episode. And I realize you told me you probably only have about an hour, so I don't know if we need to
Yeah,
wrap up
no,
here
it's
soon.
okay. The dog is laying here. He's happy as a clam right now, so we've got time.
So one of the things that the security guy, and again, I think his name was Klein, that said he had worked for Brian Thompson before. One of the reasons he was particularly surprised was not just that Brian Thompson probably always has some kind of security detail, but in light of the protests
Yeah.
in April and July with caskets being carried around, he's like, how the hell does he not have security? Which leads to
Yeah.
which leads to inside job. Did somebody pull his security detail? Did somebody not be where they were supposed to be so it could go down? I mean, again, crazy thoughts, but there's a lot of questions. Is it unusual that he wouldn't have had security, and why weren't they there? I want to know what the answer to that is. Should he have had security, and why weren't they there?
Well, there's just, again, I think, we've all seen, well, I can't say we've all seen, many of us have seen the Thomas Crown affair or the heist. You get different people with different motives to come together in a group. Again, you have to be, no pun intended, thick as thieves, but, to be able to have that kind of trust. But it could be someone on the finance side saying, hey, we got invited to this institutional investors conference that it's going to be a small group. Here's where it is. It could be someone that was wronged by some kind of trade that went south. There could be another person who was upset about, a denial. There
Yeah,
could be another person who says, hey, I'm just irritated about corporate greed and I have ways to hack things. Let me help you out.
there
There could
are
be so many different.
so many
Yeah.
motivations. Money, yeah, money, greed, anger. there's a million motivations. So you're right. Like there's a potential, a ton of suspects, other than they're claiming the evidence against one person is overwhelming. So we can throw out all the other possible reasons because it's obvious who did it. We got him on. Their argument is we've got him on camera from the moment he comes into New York to the moment he leaves New York, and it's no question who it is. So if that's how good their evidence is, then we'll see them prove it, right?
So
But
your brain, what you said just made my brain have a little spark. Some people have probably seen the video of his mother talking about teaching Italian and reading books. I don't know if you've seen this. At one point, she says, I like to spend time in, and someone correct me in the comments. I don't remember what it is. I want to say it was South Carolina. I could be wrong. But they did say that LM came from South going up. They said he originated in Atlanta, but what's to
yeah,
say he wasn't at this place where his mom was, because they were saying that she spends a lot, or she was saying she spends a lot of time there. There's a festival that happens annually there. What's to say he wasn't just going there as a place of like solace and peace, because he did say that he needed just to like kind of chill out from things. And if that's a place they go often, why couldn't he have been there and then headed up to New York to do, I don't know, who knows what, and then maybe over to, see some friends? That's his stomping grounds, that
right.
area. I don't feel it's weird for him to be there.
Right. I want to backtrack just a moment because Pepperoni asked if we heard that there was an officer that got an award. And I wanted to point out, we talked about that at the very, very beginning. So there's a couple things I want to plug here. One, this live will be uploaded to YouTube a couple hours after the live. So if you want to see the beginning where you missed, we talked about 3 officers that were actually given awards. One officer in San Francisco was given an award for Officer of the Month for helping make the connection between Luigi and the missing person case in California. And the 2 officers from Altoona, Pennsylvania were given honorary detective awards by the New York Police Department, awarded by Trish herself for their arrest of Luigi Mangione in Pennsylvania. So 3 different officers in 2 different cases were awarded yesterday awards for their arrest and participation in the arrest of Mangione. And we talked about that at the beginning of the show. And
Yep.
also, I want to make one more plug. If you are not doing so already, we would really appreciate, Just Curious and I would both appreciate if you would follow our accounts. She's covering this. She's got great ideas and a really curious mind. That's why she's probably just curious. She's got all kinds of cool questions. Please follow her. Please follow me if you're not following us, because we'll come up on your For You page and we'll be doing these lives. Not we, because I don't know if Just Curious is going to.
I would love to. If people want to tolerate my,
Yeah.
tangential thinking and my audible processing, I even invite people to like DM me or even comment on any of our videos about things they want us to talk about. I think that's always fun too.
Yeah, and I think and you're welcome to come on again. I would love to do more shows with you. So hopefully we will do that and keep in touch on this thing and outside of this. We've also got that conversation going outside of this. So
Yep.
I hope to foster that relationship and keep that going.
Yes.
In the meantime, I will let people know a few more things, and then I'm going to wrap up for the night if that's okay.
Sounds
So
great.
again, I want to remind you there's a website, devilsadvocates.info. There's a YouTube channel, Devil's Advocates, on YouTube. I post all the lives there. I'm covering the P. Diddy case. I'm getting back into the Koberger case. Recently, I've been seeing a TikTok blow up with new conspiracy ideas related to the helicopter and the airplane crash. And at first I thought, everything in the world cannot be a conspiracy. But then when I hear that there were a bunch of Russians on board that plane and that it was a military helicopter that took it out, I thought, oh my God, are you serious? Like, I
Well,
have
I'll
to look.
add to that. There was no air marshal on that plane, and there typically is.
Like everything cannot be a conspiracy. But my God, it doesn't look good. So that's another case I'm going to have my eyes on. So and maybe it sounds like Just Curious might be curious about that one as well.
Yeah,
So
I have a friend with insider knowledge or very close knowledge to air travel. Let's put it that way.
that's amazing. So let's keep in touch. I want to tap your brain.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
all right, everybody, I want to thank you so much. Thank you, Just Curious, for coming on the
Yes,
show. It
thank
was amazing,
you.
and I want to have you on again. So,
Yes, thank you.
perfect. Thank you all, and
Hope
have a
everyone
great
has a
night.
great weekend. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
thank you.
you. Bye.